And it is news just in. The Democratic Alliance has pledged 1 million rand to fund OUTA's legal fees in the fight against e-tolls. Well, let's chat to the DA's Mmusi Maimane. Now, Mmusi, a very good morning to you. Thanks again for joining us. Why did the DA decide to do this? What's in it for you?
Well, it's an important issue, is the issue of tolling. We've realized more than anything that South Africans who are poor will be most impacted by tolling. It is for that reason that we took the fight in the Western Cape and argued the case that we didn't need tolling there. The residents of Gauteng have spoken in their numbers against tolling. And so it then becomes important for us as public representatives, as people who get elected, to us to say, well, take the fight on behalf of residents to a government that is refusing to hear them.
With the election year just around the corner, Mmusi, is this not the DA's game plan to try and win Gauteng?
Might I remind you that when the initial submissions were taking place, the Democratic Alliance was at the forefront of the submissions against tolling. You might recall the fact that through Jack Bloom and many in the provincial legislature, this issue has been ongoing. So this is part of a consistent message that we've been taking on board to say that we are against polling. And so this is but the next step. And we feel that OUTA have played a very credible role. We feel that they've got a very strong legal case. I think the risk is there for everyone. It'd be a strong risk for us to be able to go into an election year with a case that we felt we could lose. But ultimately, we believe more than anything, their case is strong. It's important for voters, and that's why we...
I don't know if we still have you there on the line. Mmusi, can you still hear me? Okay, we seem to be having problems connecting to Mmusi. Several questions are still outstanding that I'd like to pose to him. We'll just see whether or not we can catch up with him a little bit later as we unpack that issue. News coming in now that the DA has pledged 1 million rand to OUTA in their fight against the e-tolls. We'll get back to that in a moment.
Indeed we will. COSATU's ambition to get rid of labour brokers is reaching a critical stage. Months of accusing the ANC of dragging its feet on labour brokering legislation might actually be paying off. Public hearings have seemingly convinced ANC MPs to push for an outright ban, saying it's exploitative. Our Parliamentary Portfolio Committee is preparing to deal with the issue next week. President Zuma, though, is facing a very tricky balancing act. He has to weigh up the interests of business and labour. But analysts are warning if the ban on labour brokers actually goes ahead, it could cost thousands their jobs.
Labour brokers have got clever commercial contracting methods to overcome this change. For example, labour brokers can indemnify their clients against any adverse award at the Labour Court or the CCMA.
Okay, picking up on a story that we touched on briefly as we began the show, the DA pledging 1 million rand to OUTA in their quest to get rid of the e-tolls in Gauteng. We go back to Mmusi. Now, Mmusi, just before we got cut off, you were detailing how you don't think this is such a high-risk initiative and you wouldn't go into it if you thought so. I want to ask you now, SANRAL would beg to differ, as does government, on whether or not e-tolling will actually go ahead. You say that the case looks pretty set, but SANRAL would beg to differ. Is this not a high risk to pledge 1 million rand in this initiative?
Well, it's absolutely, we can understand the challenge that the legal process will face, but we've studied OUTA's case. We think that it's a case worth being heard. You see, the worst thing that could happen in this debate is for funding to be a limitation to the voter's voice to be put forward. So we're saying, let that be heard. We think the case is solid. I mean, if you really unpack the issue of tolling, you can really understand the fact that there are some anomalies that sit within there that voters are battling to understand, as we are, as to why we had to choose the most expensive form of tolling. How come the funding has not been retained in this country? Those are questions that must continue to be heard unquestionably.
Now, excuse me, I'm playing devil's advocate here for a second, but are you not fighting a losing battle?
We're not at all. We're not at all. We think that, as I've said, I think the case is winnable. We think that there's ultimately momentum here, and we feel that government must understand that by taking on OUTA, that they can't also sit back and say, well, in this instance, it is fine because we can drag this thing as long as we can and the legal fees must become a hindrance. We believe that this is a battle that can be won.
Now, I know that in an unusual turn of events, you saw yourself siding with COSATU on this particular matter. Have you spoken to them at all to engage them on whether or not they'll be contributing and whether or not they approve of your contribution?
Our conversations with COSATU, particularly along this issue, have been one way that ended a while ago. We believe that COSATU are taking on a particular route in terms of how they want to oppose tolling. We still want to maintain a sense of the rule of law. We believe that the rule of law must be executed in this country. And so our dialogue has been in such a way as to how we can confront this in a court battle. And so rather than having multiple court cases of which we could enter the space, we'd rather get behind those who are at the forefront of it.
Well, the DA-led government in the Western Cape has seen quite a lot of incidents unfold. We saw just recently flooding in that part of the country where thousands upon thousands of people every single year experience that kind of flooding. When you take a look at social issues like that, don't you think maybe the DA could have personally contributed to something like that, more socially relevant issues, one would argue? Do you think that this is the best possible way that you could have spent 1 million rand?
I think we need to distinguish between two entities here. There's the Western Cape government, which as a party, we try and separate state and party as best as we can. So in the first instance, the Western Cape government has allocated its own funding to trying to deal with that particular issue. They've allocated, in terms of the development and social issues in the Western Cape, have been proven to be at the forefront of any other province in this country. It is very clear in terms of the delivery of housing, etc., that the Western Cape government has been at the forefront of that. This particular initiative that deals with OUTA is a democratic alliance initiative. It's got nothing to do with the Western Cape government. It's got everything to do with us as a political party.
And the DA as an entity in itself would not contribute to any other socially relevant cause. I'm not knocking the cause of OUTA. I want to find out from you if you think this is the best way that you could have spent this amount of money as the DA.
The implication of tolling is going to have significant social impacts. I think if you take just the average cost of food, add that to inflation, this is a cost consumers cannot control. It's not one that they can sit back and say, well, when you consume something else, you can control how much of that you regulate. Inflation through this mechanism that is coming on board is going to be a significant impact on the poor in this country. And so I think there are multiple avenues that we can put on board, but this one is ultimately one, especially for people of Gauteng and especially the poorest of the poor, this is going to impact them in the most significant way.
Thank you so much, Mmusi Maimane from the DA there, and we do indeed look forward to the outcome of that court process involving OUTA.
News that moves. eNCA.com.